Hey everybody, welcome to the Tom School of Life Weekly Update. I am your Community Director, Kevin Dole. I'm joined here by facilitators Jeremy Evans, David Moore, and Barbara Williams, and also a special guest, Kevin Stokes, who's a School of Life member. Hi, Kevin, who has built a real estate empire and also a farm to table co-op. And I want to just have him on the show to talk about what it's been like developing that business from the ground up and what he's accomplished within the group. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it. Hi, Barbara, Dave, Jeremy, everybody else that's listening. Yeah, so my name's Kevin Stokes. Been sort of just like other members in the community. I just sort of fell into it. I joined for no other reason than I wanted to give Tom money, and it was timed with renewal for my supporting listeners donation for the year. And I thought, maybe I'll just join this new thing and see what that leads. And I didn't do anything for 6 months. In that 6 months, it was just me and my day job, and my wife has a photography business, and we were sort of just checking out the forum here and there and interacting with a few people. Found some local folks that are members, touch base with them, but then life gets in the way, and we didn't do anything for a long time. And then you all started the accountability groups, and that was my first introduction to probably anyone outside of just random people on the forums. And I ended up sort of feeling somewhat curious about the accountability groups. And then once I joined, I just sort of started listening to what other people were saying. I was talking a little bit about what I was doing prior to all of this, and prior to even finding liberty. I belonged to the Idaho Army National Guard. I was full time, but I was a little bit fed up. At the same time, I had purchased some rental units as part of a long-term plan, trying to find other ways to make income, but I didn't know anything. Sort of started building some homes. My wife and I, she was dating. We were just dating at the time, and then we bought a couple of rental units, and then got married, and things were going fairly well. But it was a lot of work because we didn't know what we were doing, and we kept buying incorrectly and financing it incorrectly for rentals, and a couple of bad experiences with some repairs, and we were desperate and ended up started looking for an out there, and we ended up getting completely out of the rentals eventually. And that was a little bit disappointing because we kind of liked the income, but the stress load was way too high. So we dabbled a little bit with some fix and flips. That was even worse. There's worse than renters are dealing with contractors if you don't know what you're doing. And so that stress level became too much too. So we got out of it. And it was really frustrating because we didn't really know. I knew that what I had transitioned from the National Guard to a civilian job as in IT. I knew I liked IT, but it was not as satisfying as I had hoped. And being trapped in a cubicle was a little bit frustrating, and I didn't know a way out. So anyway, we found some folks that were doing some real estate notes, and we sort of transitioned to that. And at the time, I was just using notes. And just to briefly explain it, there's a lot of ability out there to buy other people's mortgages from other private investors. About half of the homes that are financed in America are not done conventionally, they're done through private mortgages. And so there's a lot of times where you can buy from other note investors. You can buy older notes or smaller balance notes, especially in areas of the country that don't have the same sort of property appreciation like the coasts do, or some of the major cities in the Midwest, or even here in Boise, which is insane. But there are places in the country that don't see, a 2,000 square foot home for $1 million, right? And so you can affordably get into those notes. Well, I knew those existed, but I didn't know how to get into them. I got into them through a mentor, but I decided to just treat it like I was a renter. I mean, as a landlord, where I was just collecting the payments. And so we just used some retirement money and some of our profits and bought that. Well, that's the way I was going to started to think maybe I need to do something different with that during COVID and some of the things that were going on at my business, at my company that I work at. I wasn't particularly bad, but I could see the writing on the wall. It wasn't as bad as some of the other people that are out there that have more harrowing stories, but it was just enough that it got my attention, and I thought, okay, maybe I need to do something different. And then, I don't think anything is accidental, and along comes the School of Life and everything that's going on that has been accomplished there by other people sort of fed into this desire of mine to move into a more active role with my own business. And so I started exploring options about how to talk to people, talking with people in my accountability groups and listening to what they were doing with their businesses. I started putting out some YouTube videos and doing some sort of haphazard planning to try to get people involved. I've presented a couple of times, once at the live, the in-person event, and then one of the webinars with Tom, and sort of, I got a little bit of traction there with some potential clients, and that has gone pretty well. But it's also, I didn't really know if I had a plan with it when I started, and so we're just trying to figure it out as we go along.
I
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. I know so many guys who are in essentially the situation that the initial situation that you've described.
Yeah.
They're well compensated, usually in IT. They've got some capital stored away, but they don't know really what to do with it. And frankly, if some of those guys got into a situation where they were like dealing with renters and it was too much stress, they'd be like, all right, this isn't for me. Time to go back to the IT job and just dedicate myself to that. Or certainly they'd go like, all right, well, let's not do renting. Let's do fix and flip. And then if they ran into problems with that, they'd be like, oh no, this is clearly worse. And like the persistence of that, I think, is really admirable. But also I'm interested in your take. So I'm interested in your take on like, what was compelling you or impelling you away from just going back to the desk job, and then how, if you had to do that whole process over again and you were counseling somebody who was that IT guy with a little bit of capital, how would you counsel them to avoid maybe the pitfalls that you ran into?
This is pretty easy because I've thought a great deal about it. For me, the way things changed, the company I work for, they're pretty good about the way they treat people for the most part. They have pretty good practices. And the first thing they did when everyone was talking about what may be coming is they started talking in early February of 2020 about how they would send people home if they had to. And they prioritized people that were older or had disabilities, at least with the office workers. And then the next people they targeted was people with kids at home, because they knew that schools were going to start closing and they wanted to try to help people with kids. And so we had, the time we had 3 kids at home, and my wife was pregnant. And so I was one of the first in my office to get sent home. And I've rarely worked remotely prior to that. Every once in a while it would be possible. So, but I hadn't done it on a regular basis. And we got home, and my oldest was getting ready to start kindergarten, and we were looking at that fall to start kindergarten. And a lot of the options that we had planned, they weren't going to be public school. We were looking at a couple of different hybrid private school / homeschool programs that were related to our church. And through a series of events, those options started closing pretty early, like around May. Those programs shut down, and my work went from, it's a couple of weeks, to, hey, maybe we're just going to hold what we got. Everybody's going to work from home for the next 6 months. And in that time, my wife, who's at home with our kids, started to homeschool our daughter Grace, and I was there, and we were around each other all the time. And everybody else I talked to said when they were around their family, they were miserable. They didn't want to be. They wanted to be at work. They couldn't stand being at home. And I was the exact opposite. I was stunned. I mean, I've always enjoyed time with my family, but I had never realized how much I would enjoy, like, all the little moments, the kids coming in and out of the room. I'd be on a call, Zoom call, and it suddenly became acceptable for that to happen. Nobody thought twice about it, because half the people on the calls were executives that had the same thing, right? And so this shift started happening, and a lot of my perspective started to change. And my wife and I just started talking. Susan and I were saying every day, you're like, this much has changed. Why don't we look at what else we can change? Why doesn't why can't we change everything around what we're doing? And every single time we it came up, we said, man, we could move somewhere else if we wanted to. And we ended up not moving or any of that sort of stuff. But the reality for us became that this is surprising. We really like being around each other a lot. and we can work together. And she started working on some other stuff in her photography business that started to make it bloom, which she had to do because of the way it was changing, because of how everybody was with COVID and their response to it. And so there was this tremendous amount of dynamic change every day. It seemed like that. It wasn't all roses by any means, but it was certainly invigorating to us. And we just
So
sort
it
of,
was it
yeah, no, go
sorry,
ahead.
so it was less oh, I hate where I am, and it's more like, oh, I'm seeing these other possibilities of how cool
That's
things
right.
could be. That's
100%.
great.
Yeah. My
Briefly,
situation wasn't negative. It was, if we can change this, why can't we change everything around us?
That's
real
beautiful.
quick. One, changes happen all the time, right? I
Yeah.
don't necessarily. I want to query Kevin about how he perceived opportunity, because I think that that's really valuable, and that's a skill, right? Um, Kevin may or may not have the insight, so we're not even going to query Kevin on that. But I want to note, most people said, right, we're doing COVID, we're doing lockdowns, the world is going to hell. Welcome to hell. I'm in hell world now. That's not the case. That's not the case. At all times, things are changing. And the question is whether or not you can capitalize on the opportunities that are around you that you uh, may or may not be salient to you. But anyway, that's a tough question, but I want to do it a little bit easier. How did it feel to take the plunge, to say, right, I am going to invest a ton of time, maybe some money, in doing my own thing?
Well, it's difficult to say because I have that golden parachute still hanging around. It started out as a backstop. Don't get me wrong. I still actually like what I do on a daily basis. I'm still doing my day job, but it's become a drag rather than a parachute. Like that transition has been the slowest part for me to accept. I haven't made the leap to throw the torch back in my boat and stay on shore, right? I'm still 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But I'm really close now. Instead of being, just my 1 foot outside the boat, I barely have a toe on the boat, right? And so that wave that's going to come, I hope, is going to knock me out of it completely. And I think that's going to happen pretty soon. Um, and a lot of that stems from the watching people in the accountability groups and interacting with other people and listening to their stories, and then the fact that I get to tell mine for a short period of time. I've come to realize that words are very powerful. The words you speak, the words you hear are extremely influential. And there's, if nothing else, the words you speak, if you're anyone of in remote integrity, you say you're going to do something, there suddenly becomes this force that continues to propel you, even when you're not thinking about it, that you think, I've spoken that I'm going to do this, and I have to do it now because I'm not going to be a liar. I can't. That weighs on me too much, right? And so I feel like there's this moment where I didn't know what I wanted, but I spoke it anyway. Jeremy was there. He probably doesn't even know, just because we're in the accountability groups and he hears it from everybody else. But you speak it out loud, and then suddenly you're like, well, I see them doing it. I see them doing it. I better do it. The moment you start doing things, the easier it is to do things. It's this snowball effect. It's not the words I said the first time, but we'll keep it G-rated here. But the reality is that you if you let it, the momentum will build on its own, and you'll be shocked at what you can accomplish. And it's the same. I have the same amount of time. I'm not working later every day. I'm just being more efficient because I'm learning from other people what they're doing. I mean, instead of sitting there at lunch and not doing it or whatever, I'm working towards both businesses. And I think that's pushed my wife too, because she's seeing me do it, and she started talking to people, and our food and meat co-op that we started, that was really us just wanting to become customers. We were looking for a solution for finding, I'll back up. We can't garden for nothing in the world. I can't even grow tomatoes. Tomatoes and strawberries are like weeds in Idaho, and I can't grow either one. And 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 neither can my wife. And we've tried multiple times, and it's just not our thing. But we started looking for options for sources of food that we knew we could trust. And we had a couple of family members that we could get some items from, but it wasn't regular enough. And then my wife found this co-op in Utah that was doing group buys. They would pool a bunch of people's money together. They set up a Shopify site, and people would pick the items that they were going to buy. They pay for them today. And then she would go to the distributors that were either local or direct to some of the producers and buy their product, whether it was beef or fresh chicken or some poultry. Some fish from some people in Florida. And she slowly built out this market of this network of producers that she would pay them up front, and then they would deliver items, and then she would go drop them off in a parking lot to people, and they would pick them up. She started that in the middle of 2020. And we started saying, hey, when are you going to come to Idaho? When are you going to come to Idaho? And about the fourth time my wife called them and asked or emailed them, they said, well, we can't get anybody to do it, and you keep bothering me, so maybe you should do it. And my wife was like, I don't want to do this. And I said, I don't want to do this. And then a couple of days later, we said, well, shit, we're going to have to do this because we want these items, and we want an alternative to what we get here, because a lot of the foods that we buy locally we're homegrown like everybody else. We had a source for cage-free chickens, and they were a farm, and bird flu came through, and they had to destroy 2 million chickens. And so we were out of eggs. And so that's a little bit stressful because we were eating a fair amount with our large family. And so anyway, long story short, we ended up talking to him and said, okay, well, we can do this. And Cassie, the leader, said, okay, well, if you're going to do this, that's fine, but I can't do it until June of this year. And my wife said, well, that's not good enough. I want to start now. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to start now. And they're like, okay, fine. And so we set out a plan, and we opened our first sale I think it was the first or second week of March. And we just started marketing to some local groups here in Facebook groups of people that were, food prep, or for some canning groups. There's a freeze dryer group. There's a bunch of different type of prepper type communities around here. And that's not uncommon in Idaho. Just there's a lot of people that do a lot of food storage in Idaho and Utah. And I think there was a large inbuilt customer base here. And we started getting some feedback from people that said, yeah, let's do this. We'll sign up. And we said, okay. So we started an email list. We opened the sale and started an hour in. So we expected to move about 3,000 pounds of beef and chicken over the course of 4 weeks. And I checked an hour into the sale, and we were at like 2,000 pounds. And I was kind of surprised. And by, I think, about an hour and a half after that, so like by 3 hours in, we had sold somewhere around 5,000 pounds. And I got a text from Cassie, and she said, our van can hold 3,500 pounds. So when you get over 3,000 pounds, let us know. We said, well, it's a little too late for that. And she's like, oh, so she scrambled, and we sort of cooled off our marketing, and it just kept building a little bit. And we scrambled for a truck. We finally found a truck, and we suddenly had a goal of reaching 17,000 pounds max. And I think we met that within the next week. And so we ended up having to close the sale out early around the third week of March. And then just this last weekend, we delivered the first truckload, and we met at 5 different locations and dropped off to people. They just show up in the car, and we would offload the truck and put the items that they had chose into their vehicle, and then they left. It was kind of nice because they'd already paid us, and so there wasn't any money changing. It was just like in and out. And I think our longest stop was about half an hour, and we processed 85 cars at that location. The last location had the least amount of cars because it's a little bit farther on the other side of town, and it was late in the day, and I only messed up twice there. So I loaded the wrong items on somebody's car, and they had to come back. Another person got over across the parking lot and then came back.
So you're clearly just an insanely high energy person. Like you're getting a whole lot of stuff done out there in the world. I wonder what is it that you come to the school for, and what do you get from these groups? I mean, like certain people I see, I go, man, this guy just has this inexhaustible energy source. What do you need that you get from the group?
I didn't know what I needed from the group when I started, right? And so when I first joined, it was curiosity. And then it was sort of infectious to be around people that held a similar worldview, which is, I mean, it's not difficult to find those people here, but I find even most of the people that I know locally are, I would say I'm a right of center personality type, but it depends on what the deal is. And I have slowly become a reluctant libertarian to the point where now, like, I don't even know what I am, but what I know I'm not is the person that cares about politics. I just care about the people around me. And I find that the amount of energy I have to expend to be around people that I enjoy in the school of life is almost nil compared to having to be around my neighbors or the other people that I meet on a day-to-day basis. And even members of my own family are more difficult to be around than the people that I've met in the school. And what I've realized over time is that, and I said this to a number of people after I got back from the in-person event, is that I wish we weren't meeting on Zoom all the time. I wish that all of us were in the same neighborhood. I wish that everybody on this call and the people that are even curious about watching this, I wish we were neighbors, because I love being around people that care about other people. And I think that is not hard to find here in the school. And for me, it's the energy that I get off of seeing other people succeed that sort of propels me in the other aspects of my life. And I got all that from the school life. And I had no idea what to expect when we started. And yet every day I'm continually shocked at how much I get from the school. And I was already a super fan of Tom's for a long time. And I can tell you now that him and a number of people in the Liberty Movement have saved my life a number of times. And the School of Life kind of is my way of trying to give back, I think. And I get, God, I'm shocked at this. I've made myself weepy. It's not easy for people that carry a lot of trauma around in life. And this is the one place that I've found that I can forget that outside of my family. And I think that's what I get more out of the school life than anything I've seen.
Well, that's beautiful. Thank you. Barbara, do you have a question?
After that, no, thank you so much, Kevin, for saying so. That's amazing. And I feel very similarly about the group. It's now I'm gonna start crying.
Sorry.
No, I trust me, it's easy to make me cry. The guys know. But I was curious, you are still holding on to the day job. From an outsider perspective, you have found so much amazing success. And I know it's just starting. I know, it's in the beginning stages. But I have members in some of my groups who are starting their side hustles or their projects or whatever, and they want so desperately to quit their job or get away from whatever it is their current life looks like to go to that next level. So I'm curious what your focus, or what, if you have a like a threshold or a milestone or something that you're looking towards to quit in the future, or if you still enjoy your job, so you just like doing everything right now. I'm just curious where you're at mentally with that.
I think for me, it's an income level. We've had to make other changes to try to sort of facilitate that transition, and that's difficult, especially when I didn't always think this way. You know, my wife and I both went to college. We both paid, you know, still paying for college. You know, and a number of choices we made around our real estate. We did well, but when we sold all those properties, we ended up buying ahead of schedule. Our plans want to live in a long time home. And so, you know, you're sitting there with different obligations that you're facing. And so you have to sort of adjust when you can make that exit. And so I have a specific number of, I think I got it from Jason Stapleton. He called it his freedom number. It's that level of income where you've crossed what your expenses are, and then you have enough room to really develop the freedom that you want. Because really it's to me, I want freedom for not just me and my family, but for as many people as that I can bring along. And I think it has to start with my family. And so we have to get through that set of expenses that we still have, and still be able to donate to the organizations that we want to donate to, and meet all those. And that's why I say I'm just standing on shore with one foot in the boat, because we're really close to having that threshold
Awesome.
tip over.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Briefly. I'm going to be so quick. You're not even going to believe it. I want to say this was a little more than a year ago that I met Kevin, right?
Yeah.
And Kevin was maybe tepid about entrepreneurialism. Is that fair? Or
Yep.
were you more?
I mean, I just was curious more than anything about that.
Right.
Was it.
Right. And he is working a full-time job. Since he has started 2 businesses, I'm going to assume that both are profitable. I think we know that the co-op one is certainly profitable, and I think the real estate notes, we don't have a lot of loss.
So hang on. I'm coming in cold on Kevin. So I was under the impression that this is just the way Kevin operates, but this is something that you did in the last year.
No, this is all in the past year. Now we're not done. We're not done. So we got 2 businesses. We started with real estate notes, and then he co-authored a book midway through. We totally skipped over that. Now, you didn't write the whole book. I'm not trying to make that suggestion, but you wrote a substantial section of the book. And then you started your 3rd business. And I think by definition, you are a mover and a shaker. You're moving right now. You're shaking right now. That's a big transition, right? It's a big transition. And it's one thing, and it's a skill, and it's difficult in and of itself to be able to say, hey, things are in flux. There's opportunity. And then let's say one step further, I'm going to take advantage of that opportunity. But the third aspect, the part where you actually take advantage of the opportunity through hard work, grit, and persistence, you did it all. Did you have? Well, I know enough about your autobiography that you've had grit and persistence for a long time, and integrity, right? I think that those things drove you. I guess what I want to emphasize is this is not necessarily some inborn trait. It's not like Kevin wakes up and it's like a 20 shots of espresso all at once and he just runs around all day doing these things. Yeah. You built these skills. You built these skills over time. You change yourself in a substantial way, right? And that's where most people that I encounter are. Most people end up with, hey, maybe I have an opportunity. Maybe I have an idea. Something like that. Maybe that's about as far as we get. And people drop off somewhere in here's the plan to take advantage, or the actual advantage taking itself. How did you manage to become a mover and shaker? How did you manage to become an entrepreneur who seizes opportunities as opposed to merely observes them passing by like a nice summer day?
You know, I think I've been one of those people that's always been curious, and I have a tendency to indulge my intellectual curiosity. And by indulge it, I mean spend a bunch of time trying to become the smartest person in the room. Not because I want to be the smartest person in the room. It's just I I'll go deep on something until it's no longer has relevance to me, or I've learned what I thought I was going to learn. Right. But that's a blessing and it's a curse. It's a curse in that you can spend a tremendous amount of time and effort getting really smart about worthless things. And it takes, and when I mean worthless, I know in and of themselves, there's nothing wrong with learning anything, but you can easily distract yourself and get down a long path of winding distraction. And I think for me, the moment that it dawned on me was just sort of realizing that I was spending time focusing on things that were just curiosities to me, as opposed to actually maximizing my time and effort. And it was just a slight shift. I mean, it wasn't anything profound. It was just, instead of reading a whole bunch more Rothbard or a whole bunch more friggin' Hazlitt, which those are great. Don't get me wrong. I'm one of those people that after about 10 episodes after I discovered Tom, I went back to episode 1 and I listened to every single damn one of them. And I haven't missed a single episode, right? So I've spent all that time doing that.
I cannot resist. You have just touched on the libertarian vice. Maybe libertarians want drug legalization. That's not the problem. The problem is reading, excessive reading. And so that's shift to pragmatism, if you would call it that.
And it's been my experience with the kind of IT guy personality, the kind of person who loves research and loves ideating and systematizing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The more extreme a person is in that direction, the more like just a teaspoon of execution sets that person just off like a rocket. It's so incredible to see these, because they're so friggin' smart. And so yeah, I wonder if you have have you given any thought to like, what was it that flipped the switch for you to execution? How do you bottle and sell that is what I'm asking, basically.
Well, I'll tell you, for me, it starts with when I was poking around. I'm in IT. I'm not even supposed to have access to the AD server, but I could. And I saw that my business, there's 20,000 employees. They had a list of who didn't have the jab. And when I saw there was a list, that was the first shocked realization that I had that there was more to what was going on than had was on the surface. And I really was taken aback by that. And then that sort of, like, that was a realization moment for me that was the first time I've spent my entire life when I would read history. I never could wrap my head around how all the people in Europe could allow the camps to happen. Right. And I know that this hasn't been anything like it, but after I saw that list, I realized this is exactly how it happens. And I was shook to my core. I actually took a couple of days off from work, talked to my wife. We actually went camping with our kids. I had to reset. And when I came back to the table, I didn't say anything at work. I knew what was kind of going on, but I had sort of been ignoring it. But I realized that I needed to do something different. And I think that sort of shock to my core sort of let me be open to learning from other people to see what they were doing. And when I got into the accountability group, there was a couple of people that already had businesses, and they already had their training packages ready for people to sign up. And I just started listening and absorbing what they were saying. And I don't even know who they were talking about, but I went down on this laundry list of other intellectual exercises. But I found this time I had a set goal that I knew that I had to get it out of the system. I had to get out of it. I think that combined with all the other influencers that sort of are in this liberty space with their podcasts, talking to other people. I think, Kevin, I knew of you talking to Tom a number of times. I listened to just some of the other people that have been in podcasts, especially like, Dave Smith, and all of their reactions started to resonate with me a little bit more. And I said, I have to do something better. I can't just keep existing to exist. And I think it was a combination of that and really realizing that I loved spending time more with my family than I did other people. And I did not want to go back to the office. And if I was going to have to go back to the office, it was going to be with my own business. It was going to be with my own choices on a day-to-day basis. And I think all those things combined sort of drove me to just start prioritizing. And I really decided if it doesn't help me, then if it doesn't help me and my wife get to where we're spending time with our kids when we want, how we want, where we want, then it doesn't matter, and it gets pushed to the side. And that's made life difficult in ways I didn't imagine, but it's been liberating in a plethora more ways than I could have ever possibly imagined. And I think that's something that a lot of people need to sort of grab onto.
I think it would shock people, even the people who are themselves making this transition in response to these factors. I think it would shock people to hear how many of the most competent, the most high integrity, the most capable people in corporate America, just the bleed that's going on right now. So I talk to people in exactly that situation where like, this is what made me realize I had to get out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the ramifications for that are gonna, I mean, if these employers aren't terrified by this, they should be, because it's not a random selection of 15 or 20% of their employees that are leaving over this. It's their absolute best. It's the best.
That's right.
And the ones who are the most reliable. And it's anyway, yeah, I which is to say, like, your story is extraordinary, but there are so many guys doing what you're doing. And and I think partly that's what we see at the School of Life is like, you look around, it's like, oh, wow, lots of people see what I see. It's an incredibly powerful feeling.
It's the kick in the pants I needed, because quite frankly, I thought I was on my own. And I thought, I've told my wife, Susan, more than once, I cannot figure this out. Like, are we the crazy people? Because people that I love and hold dear are absolutely the exact opposite of what I thought they were. And I am so thankful that I'm part of the School of Life, because I have met it's the exact opposite ratio of my everyday life in the number of quality people that I meet. I look forward to going to every single one of my accountability groups, and I would go to more if I had time, just because I am stunned at the quality of the people that I meet on a continual basis and the people that I get to know. And the people that aren't there on the call, I worry about them. I wonder where they're at. I wonder what their life's up to. And they're complete strangers still at this point, but I don't care. Like, I'm drawn to this. I'm drawn to this in ways I've never been drawn to any group of people ever in my life.
It's an incredible distillation of human beings. I agree. And many of which have the muscle of curiosity at the same level that you do. And I think for a lot of people, maybe there's still maybe that moment of absolute decision is something that still awaits them. But once that curiosity is rerouted toward, how could my life be different? How could my income be different? You were exposed to some things, both that frustrated you, that inspired you, that made you think differently about the landscape, the ecosystem that you wanted to spend more time in. And those confluence of events all led to this enormous amount of drive that you have. And I think people who are hearing this and saying, I haven't found my thing just yet, elements that lead to this moment, that lead to this drive, because it does kick in. And sometimes it takes a little bit of tinkering with the internal chemistry to make it come alive, but it's clearly come alive in you, and I can feel it. It's very infectious listening to you.
Oh, thank you. Because I would agree, because like I said, I had no expectations. I had no idea. I certainly never thought I would be chucking boxes of meat on a weekend and having people get out of their car and hug us because they love what we're doing. Like that never on my radar. I know for a fact that would have never occurred, because I would have never encouraged my wife to continue pursuing, and I would have never ever said, well, yeah, they're not, if they're not going to provide it here because there's nobody's here, then you do it. That's okay. I'll cover the kids while you do take that phone call and figure out the next step. And all that occurred because of how my mentality has changed from being a part of this community here.
Well, I can't think of a better way to close. That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Kevin, for being here and telling your story. It's fantastic for me personally to meet you. And we should stay in touch. Yeah, thanks everybody. Great episode, everybody. Any final thoughts?
Yeah. What websites shall we direct people to?
Oh, yeah. Where do we send people? That's right. Thank you.
So the Food Meat Co-op is right now there's one in Utah. So if you're in Utah, that would be foodandmeatcoop.com, COOP. If you're in Idaho and you want to maybe check us out, right now it's Food and Meat Coop in SWIdaho.com. It's the worst, but we're going to change that. Eventually we're going to make the one URL the main site, and then depending on your region, it'll route you to the correct location. But we haven't crossed that bridge yet. And then the note stuff, you can find me. I'm all over the forums at the School of Life, but it's bluehorizonnotes.com. And there's just a general page there for a little bit of information, a little bit about me.
And we'll get all of those.
Bluehorizonnotes.com. Yes. And
we'll get all of those notes all of those links in the show notes.
Appreciate it.
Beautiful. All right. Thanks, everybody.